opinion, do you perceive a correlation between the symbolic representation and the clothing chosen?
I don't think there was a lot of connection in between the symbol and the clothes, because I couldn't see the clothes, the make, the fabric until I get to see the clothes. I then started to thinking, how will I wear it, how will I style it, how will I make it more me. So it was interesting to see that the symbol, I picked the symbol randomly after a while, and the clothes I received still managed to find a way to customize it to make it fit to what I assigned it to do.
Upon first glance, between the symbols and the clothing, I wasn't able to make a connection between the two, other than the obvious use of hangers on the rack. However, whilst being in the space, I seemed to make a connection between the use of the symbols on the cards and the clothes, as I realised my personal choices were affecting my decisions, like you'd expect to see when you're getting dressed each morning.
How has the symbol impacted your fashion choices? Could you provide examples?
I think the clothes that I choose to wear and the way I wore worked as a communicating tool to express myself visually.
The symbols ended up influencing my wear subconsciously. It wasn't until after I'd completed the scene and reflected on my choices was I aware I'd been influenced by any of the symbols on the rack.
What was the rationale behind selecting the particular area of the body to feature the clothing?
On a daily basis, we use our bodies to function physically, and I thought that removing elbows would challenge my movement. Doing so, I wanted to see which parts of my body will be impacted the most.
I chose my neck as I knew it would ultimately limit my eyeline. Personally, when I get dressed or undressed, I become very conscious of my body or how my clothes look. I start self-obsessing whether the outfit looks good or what pairs well together. By limiting my neck, I was able to put on these clothes without being so hyper-aware. Without the use of my neck, my physicality was limited, and without expecting it, I became more aware of all my other body parts and how I would function to get ready in the first place.
Could you elaborate on how internal constraints influenced your clothing choices in that specific instance?
During the process, I had to reinvent a way of putting the clothes on. I did not struggle with the trousers, as my elbow had to keep straight. I still managed to wear it, but it certainly impacted the way I wore it, because I could not pull it all the way up on my waist. Same with the belt, so it looked a lot more loose on me. As for the top part, I struggled the most with the first choice, waistcoat. And for a while I tried to figure out the way to put this garment on. I just could not find a solution. It was very frustrating. I then decided to go for a dark hoodie made out of very light materials, so when I attempted to wear it, it felt light, and despite the restrictions, so the no elbow movement, I still managed to pull it off and complete the look. This top part also looked loose and free-hanging. If not for the restrictions, I would probably tuck the front part into the trousers and style a hood inside out.
By restricting my neck, I also had to restrict part of my spine. I had to stand up straight and only look up. I was essentially blind and relying on my limbs to get me dressed. I couldn't check if buttons were done up properly or if the clothing was the right way round. In a weird way, the restrictions gave my clothing choices freedom whilst my body was completely physically constricted.
How do you perceive the distinction between wearing clothes on your own body versus on other bodies?
It was interesting to see how much I know about my own body and how little I knew about the other person's. When I was trying to dress another person, it felt very objectifying because the person's body did not respond to my commands or me moving the body in order to adjust the wear on them.
There are so many differences when you wear clothes on your body and when you wear them on other bodies. The feeling of the texture on your body or weight is going to be different for everyone. It's impossible to say another one's feelings of wearing as you're not experiencing them.
When selecting and wearing the clothing, did you primarily take into account your own preferences or the body of the other person or mannequin?
I think I tried to put on the clothes that I thought will reflect on the person and that will match their aura and features. For example, the long hair and dark eyes. I thought, okay, darker top will match with it.
In your opinion, what distinguishes a mannequin from a human body in the context of the clothing wear?
With mannequin, I felt like I have more freedom to wear because it was an object that did not request much adjustment, did not have limbs, etc. So it was very clear that there will be no obstacles. But when I tried to dress a person, I had to be a lot more gentle and careful for their body, hair and face. I needed to be delicate and subtle to ensure I do not hurt the person. It had some sort of mannequin feel to it because the person was not responding to my movements and we did not make any obvious interactions, for example, eye contact, just apart from them helping me move their body to adjust the wear.
There are huge differences between a mannequin and a person. The mannequin ultimately has to succumb to the person's commands while also being able to resist due to the limited flexibility in the movement with the lack of consciousness. Whilst when dressing a person, although they may be unresponsive, you are both putting so much trust in each other to get dressed. Whilst moving their limbs to dress them or moving a leg off the floor to get a pair of trousers over them, you both become aware of the intentions and the job you need to do, which when using a mannequin, you don't need to think about it as you're in complete control of the vessel.
Do you believe that this scene could be classified as a clothing performance? If so, would you consider yourself a designer or a wearer in that performance?
I think there was a lot of performative elements in it. One that I liked the most was expressing the feel of being directed by another body. It felt almost ritualistic and submissive at the same time. As a wearer, I felt like a product, body of wear, which also made me feel closer with the garments.
During the scene, I felt like a designer. Although I was wearing the clothes off the rack as well, my only intentions were to dress the other person. I took complete control of the scene as my choices were ultimately the end-all decision, the same way designers control over the pieces they put out. However, as I was also wearing the clothing, I was able to control how I styled them, whilst the other person was not and had to conform to my clothing preferences.
Could you describe the interaction between your body and clothing in terms of qualities such as heaviness, lightness, hardness, flexibility, etc.?
It was interesting to observe my body's reaction to the movement of fabric as I tried to respond to it. My upper limbs felt lighter and more delicate. I felt the need to take a good care of the garment because of the subtleness of the material. When I wore the jeans, I noticed the hardness of the material and the stiff movement of it. It made me feel heavy and slow in my movement because of the limited movement of the fabric the trousers were made from.
The clothes I chose to wear were heavy. I felt weighed down by the clothes at some points, especially on the lower half of my body. I felt grounded in that spot, which restricted my movement around the space. However, whilst wearing something lighter on my top half, I was in complete contrast to myself. I was able to throw my hands around and contort them around my body, using them to help balance my restrictions.
To what extent did emotions play a role in your selection and wearing of the clothing? Could you explain how and why?
I do not think I found much of emotional connection in this part. It was more physical reaction to the fabric and the way it moves. Same with my facial expressions, definitely change over different poses and movement, but again I think it came from the physical aspect of the wear. Felt more like a response to a movement.
I think my emotions definitely intervened in the wearing of the clothes. As humans, we attach emotions to everything we do. This project won't just turn them off. I felt a conflict inside of me to let loose and be free whilst also feeling stuck in one place as I was wearing something tight or heavy, restricting my want to be free.
Could you elucidate on the thought processes, perceptions, and decision-making factors that influenced your clothing choices in that scenario?
To me, it was important to find a way to feel like one with the fabric and the way it moved. I've been focusing on the speed, levels, and intensity of the movement while trying to wear the garments. When trying to wear a top part, my intuition was telling me to do it very smooth and lightly, but at the same time my movements were following the make of the wear.
What were the factors you considered when selecting the area to feature the clothing on your body?
Knowing my rather minimalistic approach to life when drawing my area, I was focusing on how little space I need and how can I make it comfortable for myself without having to use too much space.
When I drew my area, I wanted to give myself enough space to move freely. I already felt limited in the clothing choices and had the restrictions of the materials made my body feel, so I wanted the space to allow me to take some of the control back.
How did the clothing placement impact the overall effect of the outfit compared to when no specific area was emphasized?
Despite drawing the area myself, I thought that without paying attention to it, I had a lot more freedom to wear. In the second attempt, when I only used the drawn space, I realized how wrong I was about the space I used or need.
As I drew the space myself, I knew the amount of space I would need to dress myself and move freely in order to explore the clothing. The space was big enough that I was able to feel not restricted in my movement, and I wasn't very aware of or paying attention to the area that I was set in, as I knew I had the space to move.
Could you describe any discrepancies between your expectations of the physical space required to wear the clothing versus the actual space necessary?
I definitely thought that I'm using a lot less space. It was more surprising to see how limited my movement was when I lost all the space in the room. It felt very robotic and wrong. Even though I put clothes on from a day one, I feel completely new considering the restrictions of the space.
During the scene, I almost realised I might have drawn too much space on the floor. I didn't want to feel limited in the amount of space I had drawn, but also realised I might have overestimated the amount in order not to feel restricted. I became so obsessed with the idea of freedom and movement in this activity that I overestimated myself.
Could you provide insight into the reasoning behind the differences in the paintings on the floor versus the wall?
To be honest, I did not think about it before, but now reflecting upon it, I realized that the space will not matter as long as I'm conscious of my movement and my body, because at the end of the day, I'm in control of my body and the way I wear.
The reason the painting on the wall and on the floor were different is I wanted to give myself a complete contrast. On the floor, I knew I had already drawn too much space, that I had the complete freedom to move around, whilst I also recognised that I might have overestimated a little bit. So when I drew on the wall, I wanted to completely restrict myself by drawing a human figure, which, whilst at the time I wasn't aware, at the end, and reflecting upon, I saw that the other person in the space had also drawn a very similar thing. It was a very interesting activity to have two different spaces that had complete opposite ways to move everything.